Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, gents.
Howdy.
How are you?
Doing great.
I'm all right. How are y'all? Well, I got to get the trio in, so.
See, we should all get a picture here to give our coffee mugs up and, real intense
That's right.
look.
We're nothing if not predictable. So good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome,
Jimmy
welcome. Good morning, good morning.
Hearing Jimmy like 10
morning.
seconds after he's done talking.
Yeah, it's like an echo.
Feels like I'm watching Godzilla movie.
Great. I'm all right. How are y'all?
And his mouth isn't moving.
Crazy, isn't it? What the tricks that I have. So here we are, another Sunday.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's good to be home, back in the friendly confines of the nurturing biosphere. For those who know what that means, for those of you who don't, it's just good to be home.
Now that I'm not commuting, I don't listen to that.
I know
as much anymore.
Your P1 status is slipping.
I know. I gotta change that up somehow.
Got to get back to that. I'm over here trying to figure out how to start a watching party while we're talking. So
yeah, I probably should do that myself.
I don't know. It's like every week I wake up like a cow staring at a new gate. Just I don't know.
I found if I do something, even if I've done it a lot, and then I don't do it for not that long of a time, I completely forget how to do it. It's really sad. I think if I didn't play guitar for like a few months, I'd completely forget how to do it. I'm awful about it. I'm repping the East Texas Print Shop material.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, the craziness continues with no end in sight. Gentlemen, there is no end in sight. I believe it will get more difficult before it gets better. How do you like that?
Yeah, at least it is nice to see all the deaths trending down. Praise God for that. That seems to be, even as the cases go up, the mortality rate seems to go down, which is encouraging to me at least.
Yeah, which is kind of the key, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting is I kind of took a little heat recently for my position that, to me, the most important is not the number of cases, but the hospitalization and the life loss.
Sure.
Because I think we're all going to get it one way or another. We're all going to have a taste of the COVID. I just think that's the inevitableness.
Now, even though you believe that, I don't appreciate you coughing on me every morning when I walk in the office.
Well, it's just my way. I am trying to herd mentality as quickly as we can. Herd
immunity.
Mentality. Yeah. Oh, that's Freudian. That could be a Freudian slip right there.
That might be. Yeah.
It could be.
Hey, that diner we ate on was that Thursday? So
yep.
Awesome meal. Would go back 100 times, but I don't think COVID-19 could live in there.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, COVID doesn't go there. I mean, it just doesn't even want to mess with that place.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the good things about like going to the movie theater and stuff now is how clean it all is. You used to go in and you'd be walking in like soda that was spilled like 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. And now that they're like, so hopefully even when all this is over, we keep some of these levels of cleanliness. It sure is nice to go to different places and experience actual sanitation for once.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, listen, let me just say, I'm kind of in this kind of mood this morning. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, probably not.
We will return to the filth from which we have come.
The dog
My wife
will like it.
Question last night. Everyone's advertising. They're cleaning to the new standards. Are they?
Well,
are they? I mean, I have seen symbolism over substance till I'm drowning in it.
Yeah.
Even at Starbucks, everyone in there is fondling the cup and the lid and the sleeve and all that. And when he goes to hand it to me, he puts it in a cup.
Oh, like in the second cup?
Yeah. What did you just save me from? I mean, the only thing you saved me is from me touching you. That's it. And I don't necessarily caress the hands of people who are handing me cups of coffee.
Yeah, they might. I was going to say, they might stop handing you cups of coffee if you start doing that.
Yeah.
I saw one of my friends post on Facebook. I don't know if it was original or it's been going around, but he said he's washed his hands so much that his 8th grade test answers have been revealed.
Yeah,
that's funny.
The old club.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
That is funny right there. I'm not kidding you. It is true. It is true. So, good morning to all of our wonderful friends from out of state. I see Arkansas and Georgia here and Florida here. And I don't see our brother from Tennessee yet, but I'm confident. And I don't know. My dad may roll it out. He's in Arizona currently. So, but yep. So it's good to be back. Looking forward to being back on the teaching platform. You know, you've been gone a bit when you open the notes and it says Happy Father's Day, and you go, well, that can't be right. But it sure enough was. So looking forward to wrapping up. We got probably 2 weeks we're going to spend with Paul and Silas, and then I think I have one more that I want to touch on, and then I'm thinking, well, speaking of,
there he is.
Thinking about going maybe into a book study starting in September, because we all need to go to school and study books.
Yeah, there we go.
Man,
He's a dry heat.
I get caught in a political rant. I don't know.
Well, that's why we stopped putting these up on YouTube after we're done. We just delete it from the internet. So whenever one of us runs for president, we can not have the evidence.
That's right. We're our own cancel culture.
Are we gonna do the delay where we have the button where we can
network delay,
mute each other out? Yeah.
And we just say it's the internet dropping out. Well, the internet must have dropped out.
I had one of those, I guess, my baby's growing up too fast moments today. Usually I'll wake up and I'll change his diaper and get his bottle ready and sit him in his little chair, and he'll watch like just this little like show or whatever. And I look around and he's instead of leaning back, he's leaning forward, holding onto his feet, sitting up, which he's never like done before without, he's just sitting there, like holding on his feet, sitting up. And I'm just like, I'm not ready for you to be big. So it's crazy. I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, he's only 5 months, but it's this flying by.
We haven't, as a church, we haven't been able to experience that growth either. As these new kids, and it's gonna be crazy. They're gonna be like kindergartners. We're gonna have to get another teacher for that class, and we won't even know it because it'll explode on us.
Yeah.
I was visiting with a fellow pastor last night. I saw him while I was out at dinner, and we were bemoaning the uncertainty of the future. And so it's not just us, but yeah.
It is crazy.
Our future is certain.
It is crazy to see, like, even the older kids. Like, I was seeing Jared posting pictures of Cam, they start to shoot up, and you're like, oh my gosh. Like, and I haven't seen you since March or February. It's already July. I don't know. It's just nuts, man. It's crazy. And Harley was like, hey, we go at, we start school in like 4 weeks. I'm like, man, summer's already like 2/3 over. It's just, I don't know. It's nuts, man. This year's, Andrew asked me, he was like, does it feel weird that you didn't take 2 weeks in July to go to camp? And I said, it is weird, but it didn't feel as weird as it would in a normal year because it doesn't even feel like it's July. So like it was, you know what I mean? Like it's just bizarre because it just, I don't know. I keep telling Jimmy, if you told me it was March 10th, I'd believe you. It doesn't feel like the second half of July.
Yeah.
So are the kids going to go to school? I'll toss that grenade.
As long as GISD keeps their thing, then Harley will go. Grant with PTAA, I think he has to. I think there's a kind of a stage in process for him, but
yeah,
just glad I'm out of that phase.
Yeah, Harley is. If something happens and Harley can't go back day one, she will not be very, very happy.
Well, how about this? Tell Harley to get ready to not be happy.
I told her that because she was, they were going to do volleyball, and I was like, she was all excited. I said, "Baby, I don't know that's going to happen," and because of COVID and stuff. And then she showed me that they said, well, they couldn't hold it because there weren't enough girls that signed up. And I said, I told you. And she said, well, it wasn't because of Corona. And I was like, well, why don't you think more girls signed up? And I said, that's, so she's ready to get going, but yeah, I'm trying to keep her from getting disappointed every time something gets canceled or moved. But what are you gonna do?
You're a good man. Because I like I said, I think the uncertainty of the days will be with us for a while. But I also want to give this word of counsel. Caution and convenience are opposite sides of the same line. And we need to be very careful about what we excuse out of caution when truly we are dismissing it out of convenience. And you can take that.
There you go.
I'm just going to set that right over there and let you think about that.
I had a Twitter account, and I tweet that, but I don't have one. So,
well, I have one, and I'll quote you. I just, it, and it's easy. It's human nature. If we're not careful, we can become very, and I mean, for all walks of life, and I do mean inside the church as well. I'm all about being cautious, but I think we need to be very mindful that we don't allow our caution to be an excuse for our convenience. And so we have to be careful.
Amen. Welcome to the encouragement hour.
What's that?
He said, welcome to the encouragement hour.
Hey, man, I'm telling you, I don't know. I had a tough couple of days, man. I got kind of whomped a little bit. So, Little Orphan Annie.
This is a safe place, Jimmy. Only about 25 people listening to you. It's okay. Right. And then another, a few hundred here.
Yeah, Little Orphan Annie had someone kick their water bucket over, and they're not happy about it. And so, yeah, the sun may come out tomorrow, but it might be cloudy. So, today might be the day you want to show it up. There might be something, who knows? There may be hot sports opinions out the gate. So
okay, we can handle it. Hopefully,
well, oh my goodness, just
At least you're wearing your shirt. You look good in. You're good looking shirt.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought about wearing white today, but I just wasn't feeling papal. And
hair is perfectly coiffed. I'm waiting on Megan to get back from her vacation to cut mine because it's getting too long. But
so you guys like the
watching? I think so. She might be listening here.
The Chaos Mint mask with the morning hair.
Yeah,
she's on my watch party. Megan, if you're on my watch party, Josh needs a haircut.
Oh, I've already told her. I said to hurry on back. It's getting long.
Let me give a shout out to our brother in Tennessee. He's on my watch party. So good morning, Clarence. Good to see you. Encourage you guys, if you're on the Facebook side, to launch a watch party. That'd be great.
Now, Jimmy's watch parties are getting a little big. And to quote Scott Sutton, who's now the interim pastor at Grace, he said about small groups, eventually small groups gets too big. It's not a small group. It's a church plant. And these watch parties, they're getting their numbers are getting a little big when they start to overtake their other numbers. So I don't know if you got watch parties or church plants over there, Jimmy.
Man, the only problem is they'd be getting the same plant they got already. I mean, you're just moving from a mashed potato to a baked potato. I mean,
yeah, that's some of the like Paul. I was baptized by Paul and Apollos and all that stuff. They just want that Jimmy stamp.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. So, yeah.
Hey, on all these
Anyway,
watch parties, you can claim 10, 15 satellite churches.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thousands upon thousands. We don't know.
Yes.
All you got to do is be able to prove me wrong, but I don't think you can. So, but yeah. But man, so I can't remember if I mentioned last week, but in the time of the virus, it's interesting. When I was in Arkansas, I was the only one unmasked during my teaching times, and I want you to know that was very difficult.
But
to have nothing but eyeballs, because eyeballs don't give you a lot of communication. So one of the things for me, and maybe all of us, if we take the time, is to reappreciate the value and the power of facial expression.
Right.
Facial expression can lift a room or push down a room. I tell you, these poor waiters and waitresses, we were out having dinner last night, and you can't see their faces, and I have come to know, I have decided this. I think if you have to wear a mask to work, it makes you a little bit grumpy. Because those poor folks, man, not to mention, they were just getting beat down by some people. Can we just all be thankful we're eating? Can we do that? Mm-hmm. Let's just start there and work our way up.
I did wear it in, let's see, we were in barbecue somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but, you get that barbecue smell. So you can actually, take that with you for a couple of days, with that same mask. You don't want to wash it. So you can have that.
There you go.
Texas cologne.
Yeah, you can anoint it with some sauce. Just dip it on the corners or something.
Texas cologne.
Now, Jeff, are you guys on the GISD official face mask producing bandwagon? I mean,
they did them for the graduation. I kind of don't know what's going on down there, so they keep me out of everything. But
he just shows up once a week to collect the money.
Yeah,
to pay the bills.
Yeah, I just I just now I will say, where was I? I was somewhere, and everyone was wearing masks. I was kind of okay with that,
Yeah.
Out in public, I'm going to do my civic duty. And if you're watching, I've had some people ask. We've had new inquiries here at ALF. We welcome you as you come. If you desire to wear a face covering, then we welcome that. If you desire not to wear a face covering while on campus, we welcome that as well. We respect each of yours opinion, and we have enough room for you to be comfortable. So,
right. Hey, so before Josh gets teaching, I'll do one public service announcement. You're talking about the facial expressions with the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Now, be careful for those of us that roll our eyes at, idiotic comments. It does not cover that up. So just
no,
wear that.
That's true. Eyes are the windows to the soul.
Right.
So, yeah, for sure. So, Josh, are you on deck this morning?
It's me. I'm up.
All right. Well, I will tip my cap and bow out and enjoy your teaching.
Thank you, sir. All right. So we're going to return to Gideon. We last saw him a few weeks ago, and we first found Gideon. He was hiding in a hole, threshing wheat, hiding from the Midianites and the Amalekites. And we last left him at his family's village. He had just obeyed God, and he tore down the altar to Baal and the Asherah pole, if you'll remember, and he used the wood from the Asherah pole to burn on an altar that he built for the Lord. And his father stands up for him after the men from the village confront him. And his father tells the men of the village who are angry with Gideon that Baal could fight his own battles. So I want to turn back to Judges chapter 6, verses 30, starting in verse 33, Judges chapter 6, verse 33. We're going to continue on looking at Gideon's journey. So again, Judges chapter 6, verse 33, it says, all the Midianites, Amalekites, and the people from the east assembled. They crossed the Jordan River and camped in the Jezreel Valley. The Lord's Spirit took control of Gideon. He blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh and summoned them to follow him as well. He also sent messengers throughout Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet him. So all of these people who were oppressing Israel, the Midianites, the Amalekites, people from the east, they rise up to assemble together, ostensibly to attack. I mean, that's the only reason we can imagine that they would gather together. And then Gideon summons his own clan. Remember, that's the Abiezrites, his tribe, Manasseh. And then he actually sends for people from 3 other tribes, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. This is important to remember that in this time of the judges, the tribes are kind of, to some degree, they're independent. They're kind of standing for themselves. And so Gideon goes and he calls 3 tribes, and they actually answer his call. These tribes answer his call to fight these people that were oppressing them. So in just a few verses from the, verse like 28 of chapter 6, and now we're in verse 35, in the span of a few verses, Gideon went from 10 men that were helping him tear down the altar to Baal to, as we'll see later, a 32,000 man army that he's commanding. And the point I want to make there is that if you're faithful with the small stuff, as we call it, then God will give you greater things. And it's not a mathematical equation. I'm not even necessarily talking about money. If you're faithful with $100, God's going to give you $1,000. It's not math, but it's more of faith. God a lot of times will give us smaller things, and if we're faithful with that, then often He'll give us larger and larger things, greater and greater things. Think about that's how we do it with our kids. Like you're starting to get them to drive. Well, you teach them to drive, and then you maybe let them drive in an empty parking lot, and then on a road where you can go like 30 miles an hour, those kind of things. And eventually, they're driving on the highway. And it's the same kind of thing we see in the story of Gideon. Gideon was faithful with tearing down the altar to Baal. He was faithful to command those 10 men. And now he's got 32,000 men under his command. So, if we're faithful with the small stuff, God tends to give us greater things. It's rare that He'll just give us the equivalent of the 32,000 man army from the very beginning. So, if you're somewhere with God where you feel like you should be doing more, or you should be doing greater things, or any of those things, look at where you're at in your life right now, and where you can be faithful in the quote unquote small stuff. And I keep putting quotes around small because, to God, it's all small. It's really just our perspective that sees it as small or large. And so, to God, it's kind of equal. So being faithful in the small things, being faithful in the larger things, those are all important. And sometimes it's those small things that really make the impact. So anyway, let's go on. In verse 36, it says, Gideon said to God, if you really intend to use me to deliver Israel, as you promised, then give me a sign as proof. Look, I'm putting a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and the ground around it is dry, then I will be sure that you will use me to deliver Israel as you promised. The Lord did as He asked. When he got up in the next morning, he squeezed the fleece, and enough dew dripped from it to fill a bowl. Gideon said to God, please do not get angry at me when I ask for just one more sign. Please allow me one more test with the fleece. This time make only the fleece dried, while the ground around it is covered with dew. That night God did as He asked. Only the fleece was dry, and the ground around it was covered with dew. So despite everything that God has done for him so far, Gideon's faith still wasn't that strong. It just wasn't a super strong faith yet. He tests God not just once, but twice with this fleece. And you see that it says, that night God did as He asked. So God was patient with Gideon despite his lack of faith. And at this point, he's tested God 3 different times, and God was still patient with him. So the point that I want to pull from that is, if God is this patient with people's faith, then why aren't we? Why aren't we this patient with people in their faith? Gideon is clearly growing, right? His faith is clearly growing. He's been faithful, but he's tested God along the way, and he's gone from 10 men to now 32,000. But his faith is still growing, and that's true with all of us. Our faith is in process. So we need to have patience with people's faith, and we need to take it with the same perspective that God has shown patience for us in our faith. So it's just encouraging. I think sometimes people try to make it seem like Old Testament God and New Testament God are somehow different. They're not. It's the same God. And you see this love and this patience that God has for us, even back in Judges, even with Gideon. So he's patient with Gideon. And Gideon is respectful. He says, please don't get angry with me, but his faith is in process. All right, and then let's go on to, we're starting in chapter 7, verse 1. Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, remember that's the name that they'd given him after he torn down the altar to Baal, and his men got up the next morning and camped near the spring of Harod. The Midianites were camped north of them, near the hill of Morah in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men for me to hand Midian over to you." Israel might brag, "Our strength has delivered us." Now announce to the men, whoever is shaking with fear may turn around and leave Mount Gilead. 22,000 men went home and 10,000 remained. So Gideon has too many men, and God wants the glory for this because God's going to be the one that delivers them. And he doesn't want Israel to brag that, yeah, we beat them because we have this large army. So God wants the glory, but he also wants Gideon to be uncomfortable. This is an important part of growing Gideon's faith. Because the more men that Gideon has, the more comfortable, the more confident he's going to be that he can defeat the Midianites and the Amalekites and all these people by might alone. So yes, God wants the glory, and the fewer men that Gideon has, the more glory God's going to get. But also he wants Gideon to be uncomfortable because, as we talked about in the last few Sundays, it's the uncomfortable that are blessed. It's the uncomfortable that grow in their faith. So imagine that you're Gideon. You're kind of a fearful man to begin with. You're a little weak in your faith, and you lose 22,000 men of your 32,000 man army. And there's more. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit, but there's through some different processes, God further shrinks Gideon's army. And what's interesting, he does it through something remarkably similar to Gideon's tests. So you look at Gideon's tests of God, well, then God kind of tests Gideon, and he has these men, have them go drink at this water, and if they drink this way, then they go home, and if they drink this way, then they stay. And through this process, he goes from a 32,000 man army to 300 men. Okay, so whatever confidence he had in his military might has evaporated at this point. I mean, he's got less than he's got fewer than 1% of his original army. So we'll skip on down to verse 8. It says, "The men who were chosen took supplies and their trumpets. God sent all the men of Israel back to their homes. He kept only 300 men. Now the Midianites were camped down below in the valley." So he's down from 32,000 men to 300. He's got fewer than 1% of his original army. And then one of Gideon's men, we're going to skip down a little bit more. One of Gideon's men has a dream about a loaf of bread rolling through the Midianite camp and collapsing a tent. Let's skip on down to verse 15 of chapter 7. When Gideon heard the report of this dream of a loaf of bread rolling through the Midianite camp and collapsing a tent, when Gideon heard the report of this dream and its interpretation, he praised God. Then he went back to the Israelite camp and said, "Get up, for the Lord is handing the Midianite army over to you." He divided the 300 men into 3 units. He gave them all trumpets and empty jars with torches inside them. He said to them, "Watch me and do as I do. Watch closely. I'm going to the edge of the camp. Do as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, you also blow your trumpets all around the camp. Then say, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" So Gideon hears this dream and takes it as a sign that God is with him. And then he divides his men into 100-man units. So he's got 3 units of 100 men. And he gives them trumpets and jars with torches. So if you think about it, if you're holding a trumpet in a jar with a torch in it, you can't also be holding a weapon. So he's gone from a 32,000-man army to 300 men who aren't even holding weapons. And they're holding musical instruments and a flashlight, essentially, is what they're holding. So, if you ever think you look ridiculous, doing something for God, and you might, maybe you're witnessing or something like that, you might have gotten to the point where you think you look ridiculous doing something for God. I want you to picture this scene. I want you to picture 300 men before a vast host of an enemy army who are armed to the teeth, holding musical instruments and flashlights. And then I want you to ask how ridiculous you look in comparison. All right. So now this is interesting. Then Gideon says something that's profound for him, something that we never would have expected him to say. He says, "Do as I do. Do as I do." Whenever God removes something that would give Gideon confidence and gives him a chance to grow his faith. His faith grows. And here he's faithful. He's leading these 300 men. He says, do as I do. Gideon is going to the edge of the camp by himself, and he's going to be the first one to blow the trumpet. So, in the back of your mind, if you're Gideon, I would be thinking, what if no one else follows him? What if these 300 men who have seen this army whittled down from 32,000 to just them, and now Gideon wants them to hold these musical instruments and a flashlight? What if he blows the trumpet and starts yelling and he's the only one? What if the other 300 men get scared and run away or think he looks ridiculous or whatever? Gideon has gone from a man threshing wheat in a hole in the ground because he's so scared of the Midianites. He's too scared of his village to tear down the altar to Baal in daylight. He's gone from that to a man walking to the edge of an enemy army's camp to blow on a trumpet by himself. So if do you think God can't use you because you don't have enough faith? If you think that God can't use you because you have enough faith, I guarantee you that you probably already have more faith than Gideon did at the beginning of this. And look how God used him. So we see this incredible change in Gideon. And I think it's really important for us to hear stories like this, to be reminded of stories like this, because so often we think these heroes in the Bible just had incredible faith and we can't ever do anything like them. But look at Gideon, look at his progression. So then we can read on. Gideon took 100 men to the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guards. They blew their trumpets and broke the jars they were carrying. All 3 units blew their trumpets and broke their jars. They held the torches in their left hand and the trumpets in their right, and then they yelled, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." They stood in order all around the camp. The whole Midianite army ran away. They shouted as they scrambled away. When the 300 men blew their trumpets, the Lord caused the Midianites to attack one another with their swords through the camp. They fled to Beth-Shittah on the way to Zerabah. I don't know how to say that. Zerah. They went to the border of Abel Maholah near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh answered the call and chased the Midianites. So I want to skip ahead to chapter 8, verse 22. So in this next chapter, Gideon goes through different things, and he tracks down the Midianite kings, and he does all these things. And then I want to go to chapter 8, verse 22. And it says this: The men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you, your son, your grandson, for you have delivered us from the Midianites, from Midian's power." Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." So now Israel wants Gideon to be their king and start a new dynasty. And Israel's always wanting this; they always want some king. But Gideon, at this point, he hasn't forgotten where his strength lies. He says, "The Lord will rule over you." And we know Gideon isn't perfect. But if you look down in verse 28, it says this of chapter 8, 8:28. It says, "The Israelites humiliated Midian. The Midianites' fighting spirit was broken. The land had rest for 40 years during Gideon's time." So all because Gideon was faithful, even when he was scared. God used this man who we first found hiding in a hole in the ground to defeat Israel's enemies and bring them peace for 40 years. And you have to remember that the average life expectancy around then, I looked this up, they say was around 35 years. So God used Gideon to bring peace to Israel for an entire generation. So the question that I want to leave us with, and the question I hope that you think as we go through this, is that if God can use a man who's hiding in a hole in the ground to bring generational peace to a nation, how can God use you? If God can use a man hiding in a hole in the ground to bring generational peace to an entire nation, how can God use you? And that's where we'll leave Gideon. We'll bring the rest of them back in and see what Jimmy and Jeff have to say.
First of all, just an awesome story and lesson. This is such a powerful story, and a lot of us don't go to the Old Testament, at times. So I appreciate you doing that. I'll start out, Jimmy, just with the first point. I usually just kind of jot down my thoughts as you're going through the points, right? So faithful with the small things, and I know you clarified nothing small, with God, right? But it's the faithfulness. So the thing that I wrote down is that if we want to do more, and so I asked my question, do you want to do more, for God? We talked about obedience. We talked about walk in a manner which worthy you've been called, and all these type of things. These small things that you talk, they're just simply building blocks to get you to where you want to be. If we're sitting here today and we want to, preach like Jimmy and Josh, and I can't necessarily maybe say sing like Travis or Jacob or somebody, because you have it or you don't, right? But teach you, if we want to get to a point, I mean, we've got to do the little things to get us there. If we want to be, do things, these small things are the building blocks of our Christian walk, and let's not look at them as small things. They are stepping stones or building blocks. That's just kind of the thought that came to my mind. So definitely be faithful with the quote small things for sure. So
yeah, I agree, Jeff. There's no such thing as small. If the Lord is in it, then there's no such thing as small. I remember a fellowship that needed to be reminded that there are no small churches, just small vision. But I think one of the things, is we see him go back 3 times to quote unquote test the Lord. And I think one of the things we can take from that is that God always sees the heart and doesn't necessarily focus on the actions exclusively. God knew the heart of his servant. And the challenge that I face and we face sometimes is we can't see the heart. We can see the actions, and the two may be contradictory from our perception. And so we need to be cautious, because I mentioned this while I was away, is we are all in process. And here Gideon to us may have looked lack of faith, disobedient, whatever, but he was in a process in which he and God could see that we couldn't see. And I know that's a challenge for me too. I can't see the root, but I can see the fruit, and I need to be wise and cautious and gentle in recognizing that, responding to it, or critiquing it.
Yeah. You look at Gideon's growth in faith, and sometimes you think about it like when you're trying to get healthy or lose weight or whatever. Like sometimes there's incremental. It's usually incremental, and sometimes it's it's kind of an up-down kind of thing. But as long as it's trending a certain way, that's what's important. And you look at Gideon, and yeah, he's a little up-down, but he's trending in the right direction. Could he, at the beginning of our story, way back then when he was hiding a hole in the ground, he probably couldn't imagine that he would be tearing down his village's altar to Baal and the Asherah pole. And then when he got done with that, he probably couldn't imagine that, he would one day be standing in front of the Midianite army with a trumpet and a flashlight, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then when he's there, he probably could never imagine that he'd be the point where they're offering him the throne, and then he turns it down. I mean, so if God had, for all of us, I mean, I imagine for you, Jimmy, I'll use you as an example. When you were first saved, if God had told you, hey, you're going to go to all these places, you're going to witness to all these people, I'm going to do all these things through you, would you have even believed him? You know what I'm saying?
Still don't at times.
So, that's important with how God, uses us. Is like sometimes not only is our faith kind of, it's up and down, but as long as it's kind of trending the right way, that's what's important. But also, like, God thankfully kind of slowly reveals things to us, because sometimes all you need to focus on is what's right in front of you, and just getting through the challenge or that's right in front of you. And don't worry that one day you're going to be standing in front of the Midianite army. Don't worry that one day they're going to be offering you the throne. Like, what has God given you today that you need to have faith to overcome, and just take it one day at a time and see where he takes you.
And the encouraging thing there is that I think you mentioned it earlier with, we don't see some of the kids. So when we see them months later, they're taller and they've grown, or if you're going to lose weight, you haven't seen someone. And then sometimes we don't see the effects because we're in the middle of it. But if we're faithful when we're in the middle of it, day after day after day, in the quote small things, even though nothing's small, we may not, so I want to encourage people a little bit, is we may not see the growth, but others around you may definitely see that growth and say, oh wow, look at Jimmy. I'm sure in 82 or whatever it was, 87, 88. Yeah, I should know that. You quote it sometimes. I know it was on a Sunday
morning. Cold January
morning. So
cold January morning, right?
But I'm sure people that hadn't seen you since high school that might see you 10 years later, 20 years later, even today, I'm sure there's a huge difference in maybe what they remember there today. So,
awesome. One of the things I made note of was also is that the Lord gives and he takes away. There's a couple of things there. One is it's all the Lord's, and that's a lesson for us to learn and to be regularly reminded of, that everything is the Lord's, and our hands are not to clench it, but to guide it, and that he has the right to give it. He has the right to take it away. And yes, he does have the right to ensure that we are mindful of where the victory comes. And I think we are living in a day. I think we are living in a season where we as a church and as individuals might be being reminded of this a little bit. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And how we respond in the takeaway is probably more accurate in where we are than we are in the giving season.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're looking at Gideon where his army goes from 32,000 to 300. 22,000 of that 32,000 man army were quote unquote shaking in their boots. And so I'm sure he felt more confident, but would you rather have 300 men who trust in God and are willing to do what God says, or 32,000 men where the majority of them don't have faith and are fearful and all those kinds of things? We've kind of talked about it. Sometimes we can buy into the kind of lie of the numbers, but the numbers don't always tell the true story, because, God can take one faithful person or handful of faithful people and do more through them than 1,000 people who, are about to run away. So,
and, one of the things about those that departed is how many of them not only departed, but became anti-process and purpose. They didn't just leave.
Sure.
They became detractors.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about it in the next hour. Is when God touches our hearts, there's a clarity, and we're left with justification or repentance. And some of those, I have to think, left, they began to question the leadership of the group, the sovereignty of God. You know how it is. So, not only did he face a severe cut down in roster positions, but he also faced, I believe, an uptick in opposition in some of them, not all of them, but I'm sure in some of them.
Think how disheartening it would have been if you're all right. If anybody wants to leave, anybody's afraid, y'all go ahead and leave, and you just watch. There's got to be one that starts, right? Maybe he drops his weapons and he starts to walk away, and then another one falls, and another one, and all before you know it, it's thousands and thousands of people just streaming out. And I'm sure the people that are left are kind of looking at each other going like, what are we supposed to do now? And then just imagine they get home and the news travels, hey, Gideon wound up beating those guys with 300 dudes. Why couldn't you were too afraid to stick around? And imagine what they felt when they went, like you said, Jimmy, at that point, they would have either repentance, I disobeyed the Lord, or they justified it.
And by what we see, Gideon kept his cool.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the potential of freak out?
Yeah.
All of them get out of here.
Can you imagine, Jimmy, if we all just walk out on him?
Yeah. You guys swing a sword like your mom. Listen, Gideon's a man, and he's he has a chance of being human, and that would test the real mettle of a man in a lot of ways.
A couple of things here. I know we're running out of time, but I think you touched on again that Gideon kind of need to be uncomfortable, and I'm sure a lot of us are uncomfortable, but a lot of his confidence had to be taken away. But then he says, "Watch and do as I do," right? And we're all called, at times we need to be the tip of the spear, and it's just not Josh and Jimmy or Jeff or whoever, right? Sometimes someone else needs to take up the trumpet and the lantern or whatever, and the jar and step out, right? And I think we're all called to do that. And just as those people, that first person sort of laid down their weapon and left, and there was strength in that, so all the other people that shaken can do it. Sometimes there's strength when someone steps out and leads, and others will say, "Oh, now it gives me confidence to actually do." On the flip side of that, the positive side of that, right? So don't be afraid to step out sometimes, because God's calling you to.
Let me just say, as pastor, it encourages me, because when you are in the driver's seat of the bus, it can feel lonely, it can feel discouraging, and all those things. And when someone steps up, steps out, and takes the lead, it encourages the guy driving the bus too. And I don't know if the rest of my peers would say this, but sometimes we need encouraging too. We really do. Yep. Believe it or not.
Well, think about how, the 300 guys that were left, they must have been some tough sons of guns, because they must have been, maybe they were veterans of further conflicts, and they probably, to a degree, were all resigned to the fact they probably weren't going to make it out of this alive. So, there is I wouldn't say necessarily a resignation, but hey, we're going to follow you to the end. We're going to obey God, even if it ends up not the way we would want, and I think there's a lot of just glory to God in that, because, you see that in missionaries, and you see that in the saints that have gone before us, the people that faced all kinds of overwhelming obstacles and made it through. There's got to be a point where they go, okay, well, this might be it, but whatever happens, God's still faithful, and I still believe. And to me, that's pretty amazing.
Well, there's some young men.
I had those thoughts on I think I had those thoughts on a plane in Africa at one point. This might be it.
There were some young men in the Old Testament were quoted saying, "Our God is able, but even if he does not."
Amen.
And so we oftentimes need to remind ourselves what being delivered means, whether temporarily or eternally. Eternity's done.
Amen.
And, whether we're temporarily delivered or not, well, to live as Christ, to die as gain. So
that'll preach.
That'll preach. That's not what's preaching next. We are going to continue a faith that shakes, and we're going to ask ourselves the question: what does God think about fortune telling? That's right. We're going to touch on that, and the historical reason why sailors of the Mediterranean launched out into the Atlantic. Ooh. That's something free and extra coming our way in the next hour. So join us in person. If you're going to be in person, you better get in it and get here. And if you're going to be with us digitally, then go take care of some stuff. And we'll see you in 15.
See ya.